Hello everyone, I am Avirup and in my presentation I'll be speaking on the representation of India's marginalized subalterns in media and films. I would like to start by acknowledging and paying my respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands I'm standing on right now. The images in this slide are from Oronet Dinratri Days and Nights in the Forest by the Oscar-winning director Ray. It shows a character belonging to the tribal community of Santhals. In the movie, the women Santhals are portrayed as liberated and independent, far removed from society constraints and having a set of value systems different from the main protagonists of the movie, who were all city dwellers on a short trip away from their normal surroundings. But first, a background into India's caste system. The caste system in Hindu society is made up of around 4,000 endogamous castes and subcastes, each of these having its own hereditary occupation, and are divided into the four varnas shown in the pyramid structure. The organizing principles of this institution of the caste system is based on a hierarchical sliding scale of entitlements and purity. The top of the caste pyramid is the purest. As one goes down the caste pyramid, the purity decreases and the duties increase. The bottom of the pyramid is the most polluted with no entitlements. In present day terms, the bottommost in the caste pyramid are categorized as Dalits or scheduled castes, SCs, scheduled tribes, STs, and other backward classes, OBCs. Despite provisions of mandatory reservations for people from these groups in education and employment, as the 2011 census data in the given table shows, 104 million Indians belonging to the category of ST, along with 201 million SCs, are still trailing the rest of the country in almost all indices of human development, education, income, landholding, jobs, etc. Last week, protests broke out all over India after a 19-year-old girl from the lowest strata of India's dreaded caste system died on the 29th of September after being brutally gang raped by four upper caste men. Things became uglier when police burned the body of the girl in the dead of the night, apparently to hide evidence that a rape had indeed happened. Media houses aligned to the government have raised the point that the incident should be portrayed as not as caste atrocity but as one of the many incidents of violence against women. But the systemic discrimination which has which has resulted in this tragedy underlines the fact that caste difference is the underlying cause behind this gang rape and murder. As writer Aditi Murthy says, the victim's caste matters because it shines a spotlight on India's uncomfortable position as a caste state and society that repeatedly terrorizes individuals deemed lower caste with violence. The reason for this cherry picking by the media is the severe underrepresentation of the STs, SCs, and other backward classes in media houses, and can be summed up by the given numbers. People from the dominant castes, who are about 16% of India's population, comprise 86% of key decision makers in Indian media. Not a single anchor from the main Hindu news channels, Hindi being the language spoken by majority in the northern part of India, not a single anchor from the main Hindi channels come from SCs, STs, OBCs. The ingrained prejudices of the Indian society are manifested in the records of the National Crime Records Bureau, which says that more than 4 Dalit untouchable women are raped by non-Dalits every day. 13 Dalits are murdered every week. A crime is committed against a Dalit, the lowest in the caste ladder, by a non-Dalit every 16 minutes. I will now talk about how popular Indian movies deal with the issues of the caste system. The typical setting of a mainstream Hindi movie has always been a Hindu upper caste milieu. Hence, Bollywood, as the Mumbai film industry is called, has always been more comfortable portraying class divisions and not caste. Like the hero in the image on the left from the 1955 movie Shri 420 is an honest slum dweller who talks about social justice and equitable distribution of wealth, but never about caste discrimination. A refreshing change has been the 2019 movie Article 15. It directly talks to the audience about the ugliness of caste. Based on a true incident, it has remarkable resemblance to the recent Hathras incident. The only thing problematic with the movie is that at the end of the day, the savior belonged to the upper caste. According to Shyam Benegal, himself a creator of movies showing caste politics, the story is told from the viewpoint of the natural oppressor. If I was a Dalit, I would have found that viewpoint patronizing, even if the story is in favor of the Dalits. The recent Netflix movie, Serious Men, is a black comedy about the frustrations of a Dalit man who decides to do whatever it takes to break the shackles of bondage. He is even ready to commit fraud. The protagonist compares their living conditions to that of a black hole, from where even light cannot escape. The film masterfully demonstrates the double consciousness, the conflict Du Bois talked about, resulting from a continuous effort of examining one's own self by looking at it through the lens of the colonizer, in this case, the upper castes in Indian society. Being engaged in a constant mental fight to prove one's worth to the superior being. This two-ness leads to violent internal conflict, preventing the person from attaining his or her peak in life. Next, I would like to mention some remarkable movies from South India portraying the reality of caste discrimination. Tamil cinema has seen some welcome change in the last 10 years with the success of filmmakers coming from the scheduled caste community. On the top left of the slide, we see the poster of Pariyaram Perumal. The trailer of the movie starts with the three words, Educate, Organize, Revolt, in bold uppercase. The story is about an aspiring young Dalit boy who wants to become a lawyer. Being weak in English, he takes the help of his friend, an upper caste young classmate of his. A love story is about to start between them when the caste difference puts a roadblock. On the bottom left of the slide, we have the poster of Gundala Godari. This film talks about how the body of a Dalit woman is sexualized by both Dalit and upper caste men, which, according to film writer Vinay Kumar, is a twofold operation. The movie addresses this patriarchal misogyny which amplifies for women belonging to Dalit communities. The third poster on this slide is of the movie Rangasthalam. While caste is never mentioned explicitly even once in this movie, the everyday discrimination the Dalits face are shown wonderfully. Well, the way the lower caste villagers have to take off their shoes while entering the house of the upper caste president and how they were asked to wash the tumblers they were served coffee in portrays the daily struggles of the Dalit community. The hero declares war against the president by smashing the tumbler with a rock. As Vinay Kumar sums up the movie, Rangasthalam shows you caste system isn't annihilated once temple entry is gained. The only major criticism is that here, these Dalit filmmakers are trying to create the assertive Dalit hero just to create a narrative with an eye on commercial success and not to tell the true story of the lower castes. Next, I'll come to how the tribal characters of the Indian population are represented in movies. Chattopadhyay says the tribal character was a figure rarely met in Hindi cinema. Encountered, yes. Met, no. There have majorly been two types of markers of tribal identities in mainstream Indian movies. One, woman wearing chunky jewelry and no blouse, tying the hair off center. Two, unclean, visibly uncivilized, unhygienic people speaking in incomprehensible language. From the 1940s onwards, Hindi movies have seen the recurring trope of a musical dance number set against the backdrop of a forest in a tribal settlement far away from where the main protagonists live, that is the big city. The main protagonists are almost always modern citizens and city dwellers. Films like Nagin 1954, Madhumati, Ye Gulistan Hamara portrayed the tribal people as the salt of the earth, genuine and unpretentious, teeming with organic goodness. Only the last mentioned film had some political messaging in it, where the hero is shown as an engineer who goes to the village in northeastern India inhabited by the Ao tribe to build a bridge connecting the land to mainland India. The main female character falls in love and changes her allegiance from the leader of her tribe to the hero and hence to mainland India. In S.S. Rajamouli's 2015 blockbuster Bahubali, The Beginning, we come across two different tribal communities, the first being marked by the first set of rules, sort of friendly profiling. This community remains unnamed in the movie, but they're being shown as rather amiable and amenable as well, although they're not completely civilized, but they do worship the Hindu god Shiva and get the honor of raising the hero of the movie from his childhood. The second set of tribals in the movie, residents of the kingdom of Kalake, are marked by the second set of attributes shown in the picture here. They possess overly blackened faces and have questionable personal hygiene. The fictitious language in which they speak among themselves, Kilikili, is not even subtitled. That is, the language is not deemed worthy of translation and is denied recognition. This manner of representation is drawn from British colonial anthropology, which led to the 1871 Criminal Tribes Act (CTA), through which that colonial government notified nearly 200 Indian tribes as hereditary criminals. This slide talks about the exotic performer girls like the Banjara or the Gypsy girls, the cabarets and bar dancers who were a regular feature in Hindi movies from the late 1950s till the 1980s. The Banjaran is a nomadic scheduled tribe from Rajasthan. Bagels have been very popular in the bars and pubs of Mumbai, the capital of the Western Indian state of Maharashtra. Dance bars were banned by the Maharashtra state government in 2005, later overturned by the higher courts on charges of obscenities. Majority of Bagels come from the lowly Bhatu castes, from such communities as Betia, Nath, etc. from northern India. The Bagels were starting to challenge the caste order. It was about opportunities to earn better wages and hence a better future. The ban was necessitated because lower caste women overstepped their boundaries, earning more money than their status and their caste positionality allowed them to. Talking of realistic representation of tribals, we need to go back in time to mention this landmark movie by debutant director Govind Nihalani and playwright Vijay Tendulkar. The film masterfully captures the violence perpetrated on the tribal population by silencing them. The last 6-7 years have seen a sudden increase in the number of mainstream movies featuring characters from the scheduled tribes. Does it have anything to do with the Hindu majoritarian project of Ghar Wapsi or reclaiming of the tribal person and bringing them back to the Hindu fold? We don't know yet, but we are aware of the ongoing project of the principal Hindu supremacist organization RSS to ensure that the tribal population identify themselves as Hindus. Is a film like MSG 2 a part of this project, where a religious leader teaches the uncivilized brutes to wear proper clothes like people do in mainland Hindu India? Although we have seen in this brief presentation that things are changing as far as representation of the marginalized in popular culture is concerned, but India still has a long way to go in giving space to the marginalized to speak out. I'd like to end with the question put forward by the Dalit poet Manohar Mauli Biswas. It is one general apprehension in the minds of all that the subaltern cannot speak well, but they can speak and they speak in their own tongue. The language may be understandable to few or may not be to others. Their tongue may be palatable to some or may not be to many. The Dalits have their own culture. It is unfortunate that nobody wants to see or enjoy that culture if the same is performed by the Dalits. But ironically, if the same is performed by others, it becomes highly enjoyable. This is a phenomenon what I want to call cultural rigging. This cultural rigging endorses the fact of cultural silence.